You've watched The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills for years. You've seen the arguments, the luxurious vacations that turn sour, the glamorous parties that end in tears. You've seen Dorit Kemsley as the stylish, sometimes scattered, eternally optimistic Anglophile, the one who seemed to float above the fray in a cloud of Chanel and charming malapropisms. But this season, something shifted. The music swells, then cuts abruptly to a single, powerful sound, a snippet of Dorit's voice, clear and cold. "No, you do not get to define my story anymore." What we witnessed in that confrontation was not just another reality TV squabble. It wasn't about a forgotten conversation or a misplaced side-eye. This wasn't a fight. It was Dorit Kemsley's reckoning. A reckoning, a moment of profound and terrifying clarity, not just for Dorit, but for every woman watching who has ever been cornered, underestimated, or told to simply let it go. Today, we're not just recapping drama, we're unpacking a transformation. This is the story of how the woman who built her persona on unflappable poise finally let it shatter, to reveal something far stronger underneath. To understand the power of the reckoning, we must first appreciate the perfection of the armor. Dorit's persona from her very first season was a masterclass in distraction. It was a symphony of accents, a kaleidoscope of labels, a persona so meticulously crafted it became her fortress. For years, when conflict arose, Dorit had a playbook: the charming deflection, the theatrical confusion, the retreat into the safety of her own fabulousness. It was a strategy that, frankly, worked. It kept the real wolves at bay. It kept her heart and her past protected. She wasn't being fake, she was being strategic. She built a beautiful, gilded wall, and for a long time, the other women simply admired the decor. But what happens when the siege lasts for years? When the very friends you break bread with start to examine the mortar between your bricks, not to admire the craftsmanship, but to find a weak spot? The armor, once a shield, begins to feel like a cage, and the weight of maintaining that perfect, polished image, it becomes a lonely and exhausting burden. The cracks, we now see, were always there, in the haunted look after the home invasion, a trauma this group has never fully grasped, in the financial whispers that swirled around her in PK. Dorit carried these shadows while being told to simply shine brighter. The armor was starting to corrode from the inside out, and the women around her, they mistook the quiet for weakness, the resilience for obliviousness. That was their first and fatal miscalculation. Because what they failed to realize is this: when you corner a creature of grace and style, you don't get a docile pet. You force a choice: collapse under the pressure, or use the broken pieces of your armor to forge a weapon. The catalyst for a reckoning is never one thing, it's the last thing, the final stone placed on a pile that has been building for a lifetime. This season, we saw the cast attack not as a spontaneous eruption, but as a coordinated volley. It was the grammar of gaslighting. "We're just concerned. You always play the victim. That's not what happened." It was the attempt to rewrite her reality in real time, in front of an audience of their peers. And here is the surprising pivot, the moment everything changed. Dorit stopped performing. She stopped trying to find the witty retort or the charming escape route. She went silent. But this silence wasn't of defeat. This was the silence of a mathematician. She was listening, calculating, cataloging. Every contradiction, every hypocrisy, every ounce of projected insecurity masquerading as concern. In that silence, something profound broke. Not her spirit, the illusion that these were judges she had to answer to, the illusion that her value in this group was tied to her agreeability. The maternal instinct in all of us recognizes this shift. It's the moment you stop being your mother's daughter and become your own child's protector. For Dorit, in that chair, she was no longer just a housewife. She was a woman protecting her own story, her own truth, her own family's legacy. And a mother, when her cubs or her core are threatened, does not simply fight, she transforms. And when she finally spoke, it wasn't with the accent of a distant continent. It was with a voice she herself seemed to be hearing for the first time, a voice that didn't seek permission, and what it said would rewrite the rules of the game entirely. The reckoning arrived not with a scream, but with a chilling clarity. Watch her body language. The practiced posture is still there, but the performative flutter is gone. Her hands are still, her gaze is direct. She is no longer a participant in their chaotic drama. She has become an observer presenting her findings. This wasn't a fight. Fights are messy. They are give and take. This was a declaration. It was a sovereign state establishing its borders. She didn't engage with their petty accusations point by point. She invalidated the entire premise of the attack. She moved the battlefield from the mud of he said, she said, to the high ground of personal sovereignty. This is where it becomes inspirational for every one of us. How many times at our age have we bitten our tongue to keep the peace? At a family gathering? In a friendship that has grown lopsided? We tell ourselves it's not worth the drama. But Dorit, in this spectacularly public arena, gave us a masterclass in dignified defiance. She proved that setting a boundary isn't mean, it's the ultimate act of self-respect. She weaponized the truth they'd been twisting, her resilience, her optimism, and revealed it not as naivete, but as a conscious, powerful choice they could never take from her. That line wasn't for them. It was for every woman who has ever been patronized, for everyone who has been told that being polite means being a pushover. In that moment, Dorit Kemsley wasn't just fighting for her place on a TV show. She was articulating the silent frustration of a generation of women who were taught to be accommodating, only to discover their power in the second act of their lives. So, what happens after a reckoning? The room is forever changed. The other women sat in a stunned silence, not because she'd yelled louder, but because she had quietly dismantled the very power structure they were using against her. She gave them nothing to push against but the solid wall of her own certainty. For the audience, for us, the lesson is clear and surprisingly hopeful. Your past does not have to be a prologue written by others. Your style, your grace, your kindness, these are not liabilities. They are the tools of your resilience, and when the time comes, they can be the foundations of your unshakable strength. Dorit Kemsley's journey this season reminds us that the most powerful transformation often comes not from adding something new, but from finally, courageously shedding the skin that no longer fits, the skin of other people's expectations. She didn't win a fight, she graduated from the battlefield, and in doing so, she gave us all a profound gift, the permission to have our own reckoning, to look at the narratives we've been handed about age, about conflict, about what a woman should be, and say, calmly, with a steady gaze, no, you do not get to define my story anymore.